Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We're very excited to be part of the official launch for Ready Player 2 as Ernest Cline's local indie. On behalf of everyone at Book People, thank you so much for supporting us with your ticket purchase. Local businesses have had a rough time this year, and every little bit counts. We're really happy to have you here. Just to give everyone a quick walk through our event, after this introduction, our guests will be joining us up on the screen. There will be a Q&A with Ernest Cline towards the end. We did ask you guys to submit some questions beforehand, and we got a handful of really good ones. Our author will be answering those later on. First off, tonight's conversation will be moderated by one of Book People's own, Thomas Wilkerson, or as we know him around the store, Tommy. He's worn many hats in the 17 years he's worked at the store. Yes, you heard right, 17. From bookseller to assistant manager, and he also co-hosts the Ludicrous Speed Book Club, Book People's Sci-Fi Fantasy Book Club. Now on to our special guest of the night. I'm really excited to introduce Ernest Cline. Ernest is the #1 New York Times bestselling author of Ready Player One, Armada, and now Ready Player Two. In 2011, Ernest Cline published his blockbuster debut, Ready Player One, filled with irresistible nostalgia and depicting a future changed by social media, virtual reality, and video games. This cinematic novel was immediately embraced by readers, booksellers, and critics alike around the world, and went on to spend more than 100 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. And it was adapted into a hugely successful blockbuster movie directed by Steven Spielberg, with the screenplay co-written by Ernest. Now, 9 years later, we are extremely excited that Ready Player 2 has been published, taking us one more into the oasis with Wade Watts and his friends from another imaginative, fun, action-packed adventure, and jolting us thrillingly into the future once again. We read it as soon as it went on sale, and it's truly awesome. Now I'd like to welcome up on the screen, on behalf of all of us at the store and all the fans watching out there, congratulations, Ernest, on the publication of Ready Player 2. We absolutely love the book.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to kick off my virtual book tour from my garage at Book People.
Amazing. Now I will let you two just get on with the conversation. Thank you both.
Absolutely. So first of all, man, like Christina said, congratulations on what's going to be like one of the huge, biggest novel releases of 2020.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, we will see. So in Ready Player One, the world is changed by pandemic and economic depression. Reality TV stars were elected presidential leaders. Kids attended school remotely with virtual classrooms and virtual reality, and humanity escapes like all of that ugly reality that you wrote about in VR. So you've got a couple DeLoreans sitting there behind you. My first question is, which time machine, man?
They both have flux capacitors. This is my Ecto 88, which is the car that's in my author photo, and then this is EOD 88. This is my Star Wars DeLorean, and that's the Ready Player One cake that my UK publisher sent me. It's a Ready Player 2's birthday cake on the hood. But this is my double DeLorean garage that I built to store both my time machines. And it's also like my nerd lair. This is like when I'm writing and I need to recharge my creative energy, I come here and geek out.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you. But what, like, as this has gone on, how is it seeing that fiction you wrote about become eerily close to reality?
Well, it's unsettling. The virtual reality parts of it have been exciting to see that unfold. And I've been really grateful, actually, for virtual reality this past year because I've used it to keep in touch with my friends and family and hang out in like virtual living rooms and get to spend time together. It's the only way we've been able to spend time together. But the rest of it, reality TV stars getting elected and all that, it was, stuff I imagined would be possible. I just didn't imagine it would all come true so quickly. So yeah. It's been unsettling. Like I say, I've got two daughters, and I really want them to have a world to grow up in and enjoy when they're adults. And so I wasn't hoping to be prophetic. I was, hoping that the book would serve as a cautionary tale, and that we wouldn't head down that path. So, and I'm still hopeful about that. I think maybe 2020 has just been a hiccup. Hopefully,
we can only hope. So in the last decade, when you wrote Ready Player One, like we talked about, so much of technology has emerged and evolved, and it's kind of like Ready Player One helped inspire some of these ideas, right? Like video games have become huge, like interconnected with like Minecraft, right? Fortnite, Roblox, that kind of thing. You can do all the kinds of stuff that you talked about in the Oasis. You can have, businesses and socialize and go where you want, do what you want, historically. Now in Ready Player Two, you kind of keep going down that line of what changes with VR and how do you push the envelope. How do you push that envelope in Ready Player Two? Can you talk about what ideas you explore there?
Yeah, well, one of the problems that I was facing when I sat down to work on Ready Player Two was that some of it had already started to come true more quickly than I anticipated, namely the advent of commercially available virtual reality. When I published Ready Player One back in 2011, you couldn't buy a virtual reality headset, and now you have like 5 or 6 different models to choose from, made by different manufacturers, and virtual reality is becoming more and more popular. And there's not the technology that's described in Ready Player One quite yet, but there already are haptic suits and haptic gloves and obviously visors and things that can let you interact and feel the virtual world. So, and I think that's all going to evolve very rapidly, and probably have technology like described in Ready Player One before the time period that Ready Player One is set in. So when I sat down to write Ready Player Two, I wanted to advance that technology and based on what I see happening now. And what's happening now is interest in BCI, the brain-computer interface. Lots of different venture capitalists and developers are working and actually doing human trials on brain-computer interface technology. And that's being developed for medical applications for quite a while. But now it's being used as like a way to augment the human intelligence and also plug right into the old noodle. And once you can plug into the brain directly and transmit images and sensations there, then you will have a simulation that's completely indistinguishable from reality. And once that happens, then I think that's the final step in the evolution of video games and in computer simulation. Once you can't tell that you're inside a simulation anymore, then doesn't need to get any better than that. And I think that's where we're headed. And once you have a simulation that can plug right into the human mind, and the human mind could communicate with the computer directly, you would be able to do all kinds of incredible and disturbing things, like record human experience and play it back and experience other people's experiences, things like that. So once I started to research and read about the brain-computer interface, I saw a way to weave that into the story and have it be another kind of surprise that Halliday had left waiting for Wade when he won the contest, is this advancement in the technology and the interface that people use to connect to the Oasis that he didn't roll out himself because he wasn't sure it was a good thing, and that it might be too addictive. And since he was kind of ill at the end of his life, he decided to leave that decision to his heir, which ended up being Wade. So that's the kind of the struggle and the decisions that Wade and his friends have to make at the beginning of Ready Player Two, deal with this new technology and the sociological and moral implications of it. And that's I tried to draw parallels between that and what's going on with social media platforms right now, and the way that they've only been around like 10, 15 years, and only now are we starting to see the huge influence that they can have on people, and the ways that they can be used to manipulate people and spread disinformation. And so I think like companies like Facebook and Twitter are wrestling with that now and how to deal with it. And I tried to show Wade and H and Artemis and their friends as the new owners of gregarious simulation systems, struggling with the morality and the after effects, the sociological effects of that technology.
That sounds amazing, man. I can't wait to dig in. I'm not gonna lie, that escapism sounds. You're not.
It
wrong.
would be, yeah. It would. No, I drew inspiration from a lot of science fiction that I grew up reading. Neuromancer had a kind of a similar SimStim technology, and there were two films that I really loved: Brainstorm and Strange Days are both films that deal with brain-computer interface technology and applications of that technology. And I tried to use that as jumping off point and extrapolate it into the future, 25 years and think about how all the ways in which we would use that and abuse it.
Nice. Speaking of pop culture, in Ready Player One, you had so much fun with the 80s and a lot of the pop culture that you love. Avoiding any spoilers because it's pub day. Could you tell us about some of the stuff that you have fun with, that you get to play with in Ready Player 2, and what those things meant to you, as a young man growing up?
Sure. Well, it's a lot of the stuff in the same wheelhouse, since the characters and Halliday were already kind of immersed in that world and very versed in it because they had grown up trying to solve his puzzles, that I knew that the characters would still, even though that the contest was over, they would still be making a lot of those references to things because that's part of their childhood. They kind of grew up in a warped 2040s version of the 80s by studying Halliday's life and his interests. But also, Halliday has one of the things Wade discovers the very first time he logs back into the Oasis on the first page of the book after the contest is over is that there's another Easter egg or another clue for him to follow that's actually on the silver Easter egg that he was presented at the end of the first book, which he didn't even look at the end of the first book. He kind of logged out and this is the first time that he's logged back in to take a look at it, and that leads him to discovering this new technology. But all through the course of it, just the way Wade talks and the way to the reader in his voice, being a lifelong, geek and a fan of pop culture, that's just part of the way that he communicates. And it's part of the way that I love to write. That was something I discovered while writing Ready Player One. It was a way to keep me interested and excited about the story by always writing about things that I love and weaving them into the story and using elements from pop culture, which has always been my culture, as paints in my palette when I'm, because when you reference, something from pop culture that's also from the reader's life, then that lets them know that they live in the same world as the characters. That's always done that for me whenever I'm reading a story and the characters have seen the same film or make a reference to the same song, something like that. It makes me feel more rooted in the story and more connected to the characters because and know that they exist in the same world. So the whole book, it's just like Ready Player One. It's every page probably has more than one reference to something from the 80s, and there's references to things from the 90s and other elements of pop culture. But it's all through there. One element is I can't. That's a spoiler. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I'm not.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Because I know it just came out today, so folks haven't had time to get that. So I don't want to ruin stuff that happens later. But you can kind of, even looking at the soundtrack, kind of reveals, which I think we just posted today. If you haven't seen it, we posted an official soundtrack. But even the soundtrack has spoilers. You kind of tell from the songs things that the characters are going to encounter.
All right. Hey, as long as I get another Buckaroo Banzai, man, I'm good with it.
Yeah, right on.
So another thing, talking about pop culture, in the modern day, we have so much information and entertainment and media ready at our fingertips, right? You don't have to go to the movie store and wait for VHS or, go to a theater again and again and again just to see that one trailer. Do you think that people's relationship with pop culture in general has changed? Do you think that we still have these like individual pieces of media that we love so much, like that one book that you just can't put down, or that one movie that you watch over and over again?
Yeah, well, I think so. I don't think that's ever going to change. People's relationship with books and films and songs. Like if something resonates with you and you want to revisit it, however whether you're streaming it or going to check it out from the library or wherever you get it, I don't think that changes the connection that people have with art and with literature and with film. It just the platform doesn't matter if it's good storytelling, or good music. Or good art, you're going to connect with it and want to revisit it over and over again, because that's what makes life bearable. In my opinion, and it's the whole purpose of art and literature and music is to let people know they're not alone by creating art that's about your own human experience that connects you with other people's experience and informs their journey through life. So, my thoughts on that.
No, absolutely, man. That sounds amazing. So talking about, you talk about like kind of bearing with things and living with things. One of those things in Ready Player One is feeling very like Wade, especially, but the others as well, like feeling unhappy and being out of place, and finding this escape. The first couple of times Wade goes into the Oasis in Ready Player One, right? It's to escape his mom's boyfriend, and like this refuge and escape. Is this something from your own childhood?
Oh yeah, films and video games and comic books and role-playing games. Those were all escapes for me, and vehicles that allowed me to escape into my own imagination. I didn't, instead of the Oasis, I had the Atari 2600 and I had like the games at my local arcade. But each one was kind of its own individual Oasis. It was a computer simulation that let me pilot a starship, blowing up asteroids, or, you could kind of experience anything through video games or through movies. I grew up in a real small town in Ohio, so the outside world kind of only reached me through media. And so that was how I became exposed to the outside world. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to Ready Player Two itself, Ready Player One, like one of its other big storylines is that romance between Artemis and Wade, and you pick that up in Ready Player Two as well. In the first book, they fall in love and it's happily ever after, and the book is over. But now, like in Ready Player Two, we kind of see that true love doesn't magically solve everything. That there's still problems, and the world still rears its ugly head day to day. I know that a lot of young people have learned about relationships through fiction, and Wade and Artemis in particular. What are some of the like books and pop culture and movies and things that had relationship that you learned from when you were young?
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is Say Anything. Cameron Crowe's film Say Anything was one of my all-time favorite films. And that's a similar situation, these two characters, Lloyd and Diane, fall in love, but it's not the right time, and she has other things going on with her life, drama with her father, that's got her life in upheaval, and so they end up breaking up over that. Even though she loves him and he loves her, there's all this stuff that they have to work through, and also just differences in the worlds that they live in, and and when I watched that, the famous scene with Lloyd holding the boombox,
absolutely,
yeah. If you put horror music over that, it would seem like like Lloyd is a stalker, because he's not giving up, but he's trying to kind of broadcast his love for her and remind her of the times that they had together. And so there's actually that Wade kind of acts out that moment when he and Artemis break up over the contest. She wants to focus on the contest because she has serious things that she wants to do if she wins, and her goal is kind of to change the world. And that was the at the heart of their relationship, they fall in love because they share a lot of interests and they have similar sensibilities, but they have very different backgrounds and different worldviews. And I knew that, even when the first story was ending, I was like, oh, well, once they become co-owners of this huge company, they're going to have very different ideas about how to run it. And that's going to cause a rift in their relationship, or cause at least a serious tension. It would be hard to run a huge or the biggest company in the world with your significant other. So, it's not that they're the way that they feel about each other changes at all in Ready Player 2. Just the circumstances of their lives create other tensions that cause problems in their relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it like an important part of like your early thinking on Ready Player 2 that you show that complication, that their relationship can change not because of how they feel, but because of outside circumstances like that?
Yeah, I wanted to show that because that's how real life works. Oftentimes you can, feel like you're a perfect match for somebody, but other outside circumstances, can prevent people from being together. So yeah, I wanted to show that, but I also just wanted to show the reality of also very young characters who are all still in their teens or early 20s, and which is a really, you're still growing and learning about the world at that age, and have all this responsibility dumped on you at such a young age would create all kinds of problems, and becoming rich and famous also as a young person. I learned through talking to friends who are actors and child stars that can throw your whole life into upheaval and mess with your self-esteem. And so I wanted to, be true to the characters and show them dealing with the situation that I left them in at the end of the first book, which, is a great situation, but they still, now they have all this responsibility, and the whole world, has their eyes on them to some degree, which is, a hard place to be when you're young, and to be in a position where you're making decisions that affect literally billions of people's lives. It would cause all kinds of problems. So I tried to be honest and explore that in Ready Player 2.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So, all right, biggest question. What's the absolute most fun parts? Like what did you sit there and cackle about getting to write? Like what really got you going?
Well, I love creating the different kind of riddles and challenges and leading the characters through that. And I tried to, so I had a lot of fun doing research for all of that. There's it's hard to say. It's, again, hard to say without spoilers. But I'll say, once you read the book, you'll see that there are a series of different planets in the Oasis that the characters have to visit to collect these items that they're searching for. And each one requires different characters to take the lead because of their specialized knowledge. And so that was a lot of fun, thinking about the different challenges they would face and how each character would kind of step to the forefront and use their specific skills and talents established in the first story to help help their friends navigate through these riddles and puzzles and clues. So it was very time consuming, but also, once I accomplished it, very satisfying. It's like, I realized this after Ready Player 1 and Ready Player 2, it's a unique kind of writing that I do, and each of the clues and puzzles and all the references is like an elaborate puzzle box that takes a long time for me to get it to fit together and work the way that I want it to. But once it does, it's very, very satisfying for me, and hopefully for the reader.
Nice. Now, I know, honestly, we have a lot of surprises when we read, but in talking with people, I know that there are also surprises sometimes for you when you write. Like when you write, what's the biggest surprises that leapt out at you as you were writing this one? Like what you can share, of course.
Well, there was a part that I had written in Ready Player 1 where Artemis's parents both have died in a flu pandemic. And that was something that I, as part of my research into the future in the next 25 years, so that was one of the things that, I uncovered, is a lot of smart people, scientists, believe that there was another pandemic going to come. It might be a bird flu, it might be any number of things, but they knew there was going to be a pandemic that was a big problem. And so I wanted to put that in the story, but not make it the focus of the story. But And that was something I wanted to touch on again when I was describing this new technology. But when they're, as the heads of GSS, Wade and H and Artemis and Shoto were arguing about the pros and cons of this virtual reality technology, as addictive as it is. And one of the pros that they bring up is that it prevents global pandemics because people don't have to travel to interact anymore. And now that this brain computer interface makes the simulation feel real, there's people can shake hands and hug each other when they meet, do all these things that it was no longer safe to do in the real world. And I had written all that last year, and then as I was revising the book, all this happened this year, so it was I had to go back and tweak some things to make it less like what we were going through right now, because I didn't want to take the readers out of the story. But that was something that was surprising to me, that actually while I was writing the science fiction novel, another part of it was actually coming about in a really horrific way. It was affecting everybody's life and everyone around me's life. So that was one big surprise. Fiction imitating life as it was happening, as I was writing. So kind of weird.
Reality can get strange, man. Reality. So speaking of writing and fun and joy, like what's the most fun thing about being an author in general? Not just like this particular book. What part of the process do you love? What's the most satisfying thing at the end of the day?
Not being able to work at home, and to be able to get paid to write. I love to write, and I love to tell stories, and also to be able to get feedback from readers all around the world. I'm lucky enough to have had my book published into dozens of other languages, and to find out that the story resonates with people who grew up in a completely different country with a completely different culture, and speaking a different language, but the story still resonated with them. So that's just that's so satisfying, and just it's the exactly what a writer would hope, and also having people in the tech industry tell me that they've taken inspiration from ideas in my book. That was something I always loved about science fiction, and how science fiction would inspire creative people, like the way Star Trek would things on Star Trek would inspire people to go out and create them in the real world, like sliding doors to the grocery store. That was inspired by Star Trek, and so I love that elements of the Oasis and virtual reality have inspired people to create their own thing. It just occurred to me, probably my favorite thing is fan artwork, seeing artists, because I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, but I can imagine a really good imagination. So seeing people who are gifted artists, digital artists, or any kind of artists who create art based on one of my books is my absolute favorite.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can imagine. So speaking of influence, like clearly, Ready Player One has been a big influence on people. We've seen a lot of sort of video game based novels or VR based novels in the the years after. But going backwards, what authors were big influences for you?
A lot. Probably the biggest is Kurt Vonnegut. He was my absolute favorite, and still is. And one of his short stories, a short story called "Unready to Wear," I quote as one of the epigraphs in Ready Player Two. And that short story and the ideas in it, it's about people who figure out a way to get rid of their bodies and just exist as to leave their bodies and exist without the hassles of having a body. And I often thought about that short story, and that was it definitely inspired certain elements of Ready Player Two. And then also Neil Stephenson, his book Snow Crash was seminal for me. Neuromancer by William Gibson, the whole Sprawl trilogy by William Gibson was huge for me. I love, Walter John Williams. I devoured science fiction and cyberpunk when I was younger. And Kurt Vonnegut was science fiction, but like weird literary science fiction that I really, really was drawn to and dug. So, those are a few.
Awesome. All right. So in the more modern times, last movie you loved, last book you loved. What do we got?
The last book that I love is right now I'm loving it. I got to read Andy Weir's new book, Hail Mary, that's coming out next year. Next year, he sent it to me, and it's amazing. So I'm sorry to tease you guys with a book that you can't read, but you can pre-order it. It's really good. So that's the last book that I love. I have not seen a movie since February. I think it was Sonic the Hedgehog. I went to see with my daughter. So it's been a while, but I am addicted to The Mandalorian like everybody else. Mandalorian is like the best Star Wars movie every week. And it's what I love about it is like a Western. You know, I watched a lot of Westerns with my dad growing up, like Maverick and Gunsmoke and Wild Wild West. And that's what The Mandalorian feels like. It's like a weekly Western set in the Star Wars universe with like Bounty Law, you know, but starring a Mandalorian. So I dig it. And I have a secret. I don't know if it's a secret, but I'll tell you that my friend Robert Rodriguez, who also lives here in Austin, he's directing this week's episode. I remember telling him my release date for Ready Player 2, and he was like, oh, my Mandalorian episode is coming out that same week. So it's an exciting week for the nerds of Austin.
Heck yeah, man. Heck yeah. All right. Yeah, Friday nights are typically my favorite nights too right now. So I don't blame you on that Mandalorian. Speaking of movie and film, Ready Player One, 2018, Spielberg, man, that had to have been absolutely amazing. Like what was it like just like getting that first novel, that debut novel turned into a giant Spielberg movie? Because I mean, he has to have been behind some of the things that you really love, you know, indie and all of that.
Yeah. And E.T. and I've got this is my VHS copy of E.T. that Steven signed for me. He put "Fly Us to the Moon." So this was one of my favorite. This and Close Encounters were movies I just watched over and over again. And they had I never collected baseball cards, but they had trading cards for E.T. and I collected every single E.T. trading card. So he is someone who, you know, helped form my worldview and definitely helped shape my storytelling sensibilities from a very young age. And he's also, like, when you dream of working in Hollywood and making movies, he's the person everybody, you know, dreams of working with because he makes such amazing films that like touch so many people. So it was just the best experience, you know, I've ever had. And I assume, you know, I remember thinking on the set, you know, as I'm watching Steven Spielberg direct, you know, actors who are portraying my characters, like, it's all downhill from here, man. Nothing's ever going to top this. So, you know, I should just prepare myself for like the slow fade, but I'll always have this to look back on, you know, because I just can't imagine anything ever topping it. You know, unless maybe we get to do it again, and that might be able to top it. But it's just an incredible experience, you know, for a kid who grew up, you know, loving Spielberg films and loving Star Wars, you know, and wanting to try to, you know, create my own version of that, and then to have it, you know, actually happen and have, you know, someone I admire so much creatively want to get involved and spend years of their life like helping, you know, realize that vision and bring it to the big screen. It was the coolest. And and they made action figures. You know, my whole life I've dreamed of like action figures getting made of my characters, and now I've got Ready Player One action figures everywhere. Actually, during the writing of Ready Player 2, I would use Funko Pops to stage different battles and things in the book on the hood of my DeLorean. Not to give away too much, but you know, when you're a writer, you gotta do weird things to keep the creative juices flowing. So I remember there were characters that Parzival and H and Shoto face off against in Ready Player 2. And those characters also had Funko Pops. And I'm like, oh, I can stage this whole it's just pretty nerdy. But the whole thing was a great experience. And it's so much fun getting to send this story out, send as copies of the book out to everybody who worked on the movie, and you know, have them be able to find out what happens next with their characters. It's really cool.
Yeah, man, that's fantastic. All right, so when you first found out that Spielberg was interested, when somebody's like the first time you heard the words, "Hey man, Steven Spielberg really likes Ready Player One," what was the first thought you had?
First thought that I had is, well, this is never going to happen. They told me that he was reading it, that it had been sent to him, and he was going to consider directing it. But I know he gets sent everything, especially big science fiction stuff, and I could see why they sent it to him based on the subject matter. But it just seemed impossible. So I tried to brace myself. I said, well, this is not going to happen. And then I actually kind of got really depressed because it took about 2 weeks. It was like 2 weeks of waiting, during which I'm rewatching all his movies, and I'm just becoming obsessed. And the reason I got depressed is I was like, he's gonna pass, and then I'm gonna have to spend the whole rest of my life imagining what it would have been like if Steven Spielberg had directed Ready Player One. And I'm sure that's happened to other people where they got close. So. That's but then he said yes, and then just every day following that just kept getting cooler and better and more amazing, and it was a wild ride for like 2-3 years.
And that sounds like it must have been an absolute blast. Going about growing up and wanting to be a storyteller, and having all these ideas kind of bursting at the seams. What was life like for you as a kid, as a young man, as a teenager, and how did it inspire what you write?
Well, I lived in a trailer park for a chunk of my childhood. When I was very young, I was in actually a famous tornado that happened in Willard, Ohio in 1973, and I was separated from my parents during this tornado. And there was a picture of me in the paper as like a lost child. It was like a big apocryphal story that my family would always tell. But yeah, I knew my way around a trailer park and never enjoyed living in the trailer park. I lived in a house for most of my childhood, but there were stretches where we lived in trailers. And I know my way around a double wide, is what I always say. And I knew that when I was writing Ready Player One, that I wanted to draw on my own experience, and I was kind of creating the slum that Wade lived in. I thought, what would be the worst kind of environment for him to grow up in, and I took inspiration from the trailer park that I grew up in. And thought, oh, what could be worse than that? Is trailers stacked on top of each other, like the favelas in Brazil, or this place that's now since been demolished called Kowloon Walled City, was houses just stacked on top of one of each other to make as much use of the limited space that they had. So I drew inspiration for all those things to create the stacks. But all that, being obsessed with 80s pop culture and memorizing Monty Python dialogue and escaping into Dungeons and Dragons. All of that are things that I drew from my own life, my own interests and passions, and the whole story is things taken from my own life.
Speaking of you as a younger person, if those DeLoreans behind you could get to 88 miles an hour, and you could go back to the early 80s and tell your young self any advice in the world, what do you got?
Man. Advice. I think I would take lottery numbers back for like the week after I graduate high school. Would be one thing. I think it would be, I've thought about this before. I think it would be useless. I don't, you kind of have to make your own mistakes and learn things on your own. I don't know if I would listen to, an older version of myself at that age. And I would also be afraid, I would be afraid to tinker with the past. I'm so lucky. I feel so blessed with my family and my life now and my career and what I get to do. I don't think I would travel into the past for fear of, altering something, stepping on a butterfly and changing the whole course of my future. I would be like Doc Brown, and I would want to go into the future and see how things have turned out in 30 years, like 2050 is probably what I would do. But thinking about it now, I'd be terrified of what I would see in 2050. but yeah, I don't think I would go into the past.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I can't blame you for wanting to peek into the future, man. It's absolutely an interesting idea. Okay, so if you don't have advice for your younger self, what advice do you have for other young people who want to get into writing, who love to tell stories like you do? What's the biggest piece of thing like you wish you knew then you have for them now?
Write about what you know, and write a story that you would love to read, and don't think about any other audience member other than yourself. You just have to try to write to please yourself, because if you're not interested and engaged in the story, like I don't think the reader is going to be. But if you're caught up in it and you're having fun with the story, and it's going the way that you want, I think that's the key to my success. And it's also, I think having putting your work out there before it's ready can be a problem too. You want to rewrite a lot, but when you're ready, you want to be happy with it before you share it with other people. I think people will share maybe an early version of stuff, or maybe in a writers group, or posting it online to get feedback, and that can be real, I think, demoralizing. It's better to work on it and get it as good as you can on your own. And rewriting, you got to rewrite. Ernest Hemingway had this great quote that I will paraphrase because there are kids watching. That is, the first draft of everything is crap. And so you, even if it's, The Old Man and the Sea, even if it's going to be a masterpiece, the first draft is not good, and you've got to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And so that's some of my advice. But write to make yourself happy, and then hopefully, and just be true to yourself and true to what you would enjoy. And then if you're lucky, other people will enjoy it too. But trying to craft something to please someone other than yourself, I think is a fool's errand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, thank you very much for talking with me this evening. We've got a few questions collected from fans. So
let's do it.
I'm going to step in and ask a few of those.
Okay, cool.
Let
me just thank everybody. I want to thank all of you guys at home for watching this and tuning in and sending in your questions, and for buying the book and being excited enough about it to join us here tonight. It's the coolest, and I wish that I could be there to sign all of your books and line up and shake your hands and meet you like in the old days. Maybe we'll get to do that for the paperback. Hopefully. I just want to say that. Go ahead, hit me with those questions, guys.
I would love to be, making sure everybody knows the rules and working that line, man. It would have been a blast.
Yeah, those were the days.
Right. So we've covered a couple of these as we talked tonight, but we do have a few kind of that we haven't. So this one comes from Monica Garza. One of the running themes in Ready Player One is the fight between living in the Oasis and staying present in real life. Did you set off writing about this theme, or does it evolve as a natural side effect of gaming and online addiction?
Yeah, the latter. I think it kind of naturally evolves when you're writing about the way people interact with virtual worlds. I used to work in IT and do tech support, and had so many people around me who would bring their, this is in the 90s, who would bring their laptops into work to play World of Warcraft, and to mine gold while they were taking tech support calls. And you could see people forming really strong friendships and relationships with other people inside this virtual world through their avatars that looked nothing like they did in the real world. And I knew several people who met people in their guild gaming in EverQuest or World of Warcraft and fell in love, or thought they fell in love, and would fly to another state to meet someone in person to see if they had the same connection that they did inside this virtual world. So, there's a new kind of human relationship that evolved through the rise of social video games and massively multiplayer online games. A new kind of human relationship that had never existed before in our history, that now exists and happens all the time. There are probably kids out there watching right now who exist because their parents met in a video game. it's really incredible. And that's our current technology. So when I was writing Ready Player One and examining the difference between your life between the real world and life in a virtual world, I was drawing on all of that. And I try not to be judgmental too, because I think I think it's really valuable, and like those are real relationships that people have developed, and it's a blessing, especially this past year, being able to connect with friends through video games and spend time together in a virtual space when we can't actually do it physically in the real world has been a huge blessing. So there are, but like anything, any technology, it can be used to excess or used in bad ways. But I think, right now it's been a huge blessing. So hopefully I answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. This one comes from Chris Walsh. At what time after Ready Player One did you commit to doing a sequel? Have you been working on it slowly through the years, or was there a time that motivated you to follow it up? Did this maybe align with the movie, or was it a plan before the movie?
I'd always had a sequel kind of mapped out in my head when I wrote the first story. I had some ideas about what would happen once the characters gained control of the virtual world. But and I was always working on it. But once it was my second novel. I wrote a second novel, and then I spent a lot of time working on the screenplay adaptation of that, Armada, for Universal Pictures. And then also I was working on the screenplay for Ready Player One for a time. So I was doing other writing projects, but it was adapting my first two novels. But during the course of adapting the Ready Player One as a screenplay, that was when I really started to think about the nuts and bolts of the sequel, and knew, once I knew the movie was going to get made, that there was a good chance that they would want to make a film sequel too. And when that time came, I wanted there to be a novel that could serve as the source material if they did want to make a sequel. But I also wanted to continue telling the story, because I could see how where I left the characters and would be an interesting place to pick back up and see them struggling with this new technology in the way that we're struggling with our technology, in the way sometimes it feels like this technology that enriches our lives also can get out of control and cause, sociological and mental problems. For a lot of people have, emotional or real problems that are brought about by technology. So I wanted to weave all that into the story. So that got me excited to work on it. So it was a combination of, I always wanted to continue the story, but knowing that there was a chance that it could be made into a movie helped, motivate me to get it done quicker. But I'm not a fast writer. I'm not like Stephen King as much as I would love to be. I still don't know how that guy does it. And maybe I think sometimes it's because of the way that I write these stories. Like I said, elaborate puzzle boxes that have to all fit together. It's a unique kind of novel. So it takes me a long time to write, and I have to stop and think about things. I have to come out here to my garage and sit in one of my time machines and think things through and drink in all the pop culture and think about how to weave it into the story. So it takes me a long time to write. So I have been working on it in one form or another since I finished my second novel. But actually sitting at a keyboard, I think it's been about 2.5 years of writing and rewriting. So hopefully I answered that question.
All right. I've got one last question for you this evening.
Sure.
And the biggest, most important question I've asked all night. In the first book, Wade is very, very okay with sleeping in the laundry room. It's fresh laundry smell.
Right. I've heard this. I've heard this question. So the reason the bonus, I like the smell of fresh laundry. Yes, it is not my favorite smell, but I think the reason that Wade mentions that he likes the smell of the laundry detergent is because the rest of his trailer reeks of cat piss and abject poverty, I think is what it says. So in the laundry room, it smells like laundry detergent. So it's good. That's a better smell than the rest of his home. So it's a great question to end on.
Absolutely. Oh man, again, like I said, thank you very much. It's been an absolute blast to do this.
Thank you. I had a blast. Thank you for the great questions, and thank you again, everybody at home. I'm so grateful to you guys. I really hope you enjoyed the book. Check out the audiobook by Will Wheaton's, read by Will Wheaton again. I wanted to mention who does an amazing job. I just been listening to his performance, and he really gives it his all once again, and is the perfect person to read this story. So check that out too.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. And now we're going to bring Christina back, and she's going to talk about a couple of things on the way out.
Yeah, not much to say other than thank you so much for that. That was an absolutely lovely conversation. As Ernest say, I wish we could be doing this at the store and just like be surrounded by books and readers. But I know that we will be able to do that for the next book, because I'm sure there will be a next book. And with that, I want to thank everyone for coming, for supporting us, for supporting the book. Your books should be on the way, so we can't wait for you to read and tell us what you think. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you guys.
Good night.
Good night.